This content is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not professional advice of any kind, whether medical, legal, or pest control related. Everything shared here is based on general public information, traditional household practices, and commonly reported experiences. Nothing in this script guarantees any result, and outcomes may vary depending on environment, infestation level, and conditions in each home. If anyone chooses to try anything mentioned, they should do their own research first and proceed carefully and responsibly. What if I told you that one of the most talked about household quick fixes for ants is something that costs almost nothing, sometimes around $1 or even less, and yet people still argue about whether it actually works or not? And what makes this even more interesting is not just the idea of controlling ants, but the fact that this method keeps appearing again and again in home discussions, old family remedies, and everyday experiences across different places. No special tools needed, no professional required, just a simple approach that anyone can understand and try to learn about. Now imagine this situation. You walk into your kitchen in the morning. Everything looks normal at first, but then you notice it. A thin line of ants moving like a silent highway across your floor. Slowly at first, then more, then more. And within hours, it feels like they were never just a few ants. It feels like an entire system has moved into your home overnight. This is where most people panic. Some immediately start cleaning aggressively. Some spray random solutions. Some call pest control services right away, and some start searching for home remedies that cost less but are easy to try. Because pest control services, depending on where you live and how serious the infestation is, can become expensive over time. A single visit might look affordable, but repeated treatments, follow-ups, and preventive maintenance can add up. Now compare that with something sitting in your home already. A basic household item. Not because it is magical, but because it feels surprisingly simple compared to the problem it tries to address. Now let's slow down and understand something important. Ants are not random visitors. They follow a very organized system. They communicate through chemical signals. They leave invisible trails that other ants follow. So when one ant finds food, it doesn't just eat and leave. It sends information back. And suddenly, more ants arrive. Then more, then the colony becomes aware. This is why a small spill or even tiny food crumbs can turn into a full infestation very quickly. It is not about cleanliness alone. It is about accessibility. Even the cleanest homes can experience ant problems if conditions are right. Now, over many years, people have tried different ways to deal with this. Before modern pest control companies existed, households relied on simple materials found in kitchens, storage rooms, or local markets. Dry powders, natural minerals, and food-based attractants were often used in creative ways. These methods were not developed in laboratories. They were developed through observation, trial and error, and shared experience. One household notices something works slightly better than another approach, and that knowledge slowly spreads. Over time, those ideas become part of traditional home management practices. Now, here's where things get interesting from a practical point of view. Many of these simple approaches do not focus on destroying ants instantly. Instead, they often work by changing behavior patterns. For example, disrupting movement trails, or reducing attraction to certain areas, or creating conditions that make it harder for ants to organize their path inside the home. When you look at it from a simple science perspective, it is less about aggression and more about interruption. Ant behavior depends heavily on signals. If those signals are disturbed, the system becomes less organized. That is one of the basic principles behind many household methods people discuss online. Now let's talk about why ants enter homes in the first place in more detail. Food is the most obvious reason. Even microscopic residues can attract scout ants. Once scouts detect something useful, they do not keep it secret. They bring others. Moisture also plays a big role. Small water sources, damp corners, leaking pipes, or even humid environments can attract them. Temperature changes can also influence movement patterns. So what looks like a sudden infestation is often the result of multiple small factors building up quietly over time. Now, when people talk about simple household powders or low-cost solutions, they are usually referring to mixtures or materials that are commonly available in most homes or local stores. These are not exotic substances. They are everyday items that have been used in different ways across generations. Some of these approaches are based on attraction, where ants are drawn to a certain substance and carry it back to their colony. Some are based on dryness or texture, affecting how ants move across surfaces. And some are based on simply reducing the conditions that help ants navigate effectively. It is important to understand that these are not instant solutions. They are gradual in nature, and their effectiveness depends heavily on consistency and environmental control. Now, let's bring in a historical angle. If, over time, certain methods became common knowledge, for example, using dry substances around entry points or placing food-based traps in controlled areas, these methods were never considered perfect solutions. They were considered practical responses to recurring problems. Now, let's talk about something people often misunderstand. When modern pest control became more widespread, many traditional methods were not necessarily proven wrong. They were simply replaced by more standardized and commercial systems. Companies introduced faster-acting products, scheduled services, and long-term maintenance plans. This created convenience. But it also meant that simple home methods became less discussed in everyday life, not because they disappeared, but because attention shifted. Now let's explain the basic idea behind how simple household powder-based methods are often described in online discussions. The concept usually revolves around two main ideas. First is attraction. Ants are naturally drawn to food sources. So when a mild attractant is used in combination with a dry base, ants may carry particles back to their colony. Second is disruption. Dry substances or fine powders can interfere with movement paths or reduce the clarity of scent trails on surfaces. When these two effects combine, people sometimes observe a gradual reduction in visible ant activity. But again, this is not guaranteed. It depends on timing, placement, and environmental conditions. Now let's talk about why infestations sometimes seem to disappear temporarily and then return later. This happens because ant colonies are large and distributed. Even if one path is disrupted, other routes may still exist. If food sources remain accessible, ants will adapt. They're highly flexible in behavior. That is why long-term control usually depends on multiple factors working together, not just one method. Clean surfaces, sealed food storage, reduced moisture, and consistent maintenance. All of these matter. Now, from an economic perspective, it also becomes clearer why pest control is a full industry. It is not just about spraying something once. It involves inspection, treatment planning, safety considerations, and follow-up visits. This is why costs can vary, and why some people prefer exploring low-cost alternatives first. It is not about replacing professional services, it is about exploring options. Now, let's walk through a simple conceptual process that people commonly discuss in home remedy contexts. First, the affected area is observed carefully. Entry points are identified. Corners, cracks, and paths where ants frequently move are noted. Second, food sources are removed or cleaned to reduce attraction. Third, a mild household-based approach is applied near entry areas or movement paths. Fourth, the situation is monitored over time, rather than expecting immediate change. And finally, adjustments are made depending on results. This is important because no single approach works universally. Now, many people who try such methods report mixed experiences. Some notice a reduction in activity over time. Some notice temporary changes. Some see no significant difference unless combined with cleaning and sealing entry points. This variation is normal because environmental conditions differ from home to home. Now, stepping back, there's a bigger insight here. Many everyday problems that feel expensive or complicated often have simpler underlying patterns. Not always simple solutions, but simpler understanding. When you understand behavior, environment, and cause, you often realize that expensive treatments are not the only way to respond to a situation. Sometimes they are the most convenient way. Sometimes they are necessary, but not always the only concept. Now, before we continue, here is another reminder. This content is for educational and informational purposes only. It does not provide professional pest control advice. There is no guarantee of results from any method or idea discussed. Every home is different, and results depend on many factors, including infestation level, hygiene, and environment. Anyone considering any method should do their own research, proceed carefully, and prioritize safety and responsibility at all times. What is truly interesting is how persistent this topic remains. Year after year, people continue to search for simple solutions to ant problems. Not because professional services do not exist, but because people naturally prefer accessible, low-cost, and easy-to-understand approaches when dealing with everyday household issues. And that is where these forgotten methods, or hidden solutions, continue to stay relevant in conversations, not as miracles, but as reminders that simple ideas often still matter in a complex world. If this helped you understand the topic in a new way, share it with someone who might find it useful. And subscribe for more educational, story-driven content like this.